Hi everyone, thank you for joining us today. I'm here with a very special guest to Columbus State University, Nicholas Carr. Nick, glad to have you here on for our interview here at our station at Columbus State Television. You were here on campus to talk about a very popular book that you've written called The Shallows. All right, so this has been a wonderful book, and a lot of us have read it, and we have lots of ideas. I think it's very, very timely. It's giving us a really good a bit of insight into what's happening in our world and how technology is affecting us even at a brain level. So, but as we talk about this, let's begin with this. Tell us a little bit about your background and what you've done that led up to writing The Shallows.
Well, I've been a writer on my own for about 10 years now. And before that, I was an editor at the Harvard Business Review, a business magazine. And when I was there, I started to edit a lot of articles about computers and about the internet. This was, during the first .com boom when everybody was excited about the technology. And I left there, I left the magazine to write my first book in 2003, and that was more about the business implications of computers. And then wrote another book on a broader topic of kind of how the internet was developing and computers were developing. But I'd been a big user of technology, an early adopter of computers and online services and the internet. But I began to notice a few years ago that I seemed to be losing my ability to concentrate. And I'd notice it, when I'd sit down to read a book or a long article, it was becoming a struggle for me. And I kind of realized that my brain, my mind wanted to behave the way it behaves when I was looking at a computer screen or a cell phone screen, when there's all sorts of information coming at you in different forms. And I kind of wanted to be in that state of kind of over-stimulation, over-mental stimulation all the time, and it became I noticed it was becoming hard to kind of turn it off and engage in whether it was reading or just kind of any kind of more contemplative kind of thinking when you're in control of your mind. and so that made me nervous on the one hand, but it also intrigued me as to, could a tool really have a deep effect on how we think and on how our brain works? And that was really the seed of the book. I started doing research on that topic in brain science and in the history of technology, and ultimately it emerged as The Shallows.
Now, so this came from a very personal place as you were looking at and trying to read and concentrate and seeing yourself kind of wandering in or thinking about other things. Certainly when we look at a computer screen now, and by the way, you see ads on the side and you wonder, how did that ad that I'm interested in that product come up on the side like that? There's a lot of things happening here that will pull away our attention and distract us out of that. And it sounds like that is becoming more the norm now. So technology is really having an effect on how we deal with information and learning, I might say, as well.
I think that's right. And I think it's both a reflection of the technology itself. I mean, we've designed the internet and computer systems to be extremely powerful suppliers of information, and we constantly want more and faster, and that's what the software programmers give us. And then on the other hand, it's also in the interests of some of the big internet companies like Google and Facebook and Twitter to keep us engaged and keep us distracted in a way, and constantly looking at the little ads or at other information, clicking on links, because the faster we move through information, the more ads they can show us, the more information about us they can collect. So it's both on the business side and the technology side. It's a system very much designed, I think, to keep us in a perpetual state of distraction and constantly interrupted. And there's something in us that really likes that.
That's built into the human nature.
Yeah, and so you see people who become quite compulsive and if you look at statistics about how quickly people click on links or how often they check their email inbox or glance at their smartphone, you see it's kind of all the time, every few seconds. And we've created what I think is, in a way, a new environment for human beings And I fear that we've created this and entered it without really without thinking critically about it,
Right,
and
right.
what might we lose even as we gain all the benefits that you get from it.
Well, we had this. Somebody used the term data tsunami. That there's just so much data coming at it. How do we sort through? But we're sort of maybe biologically gearing up for that to a certain extent to begin to shift, go through this information to kind of get what we need at the moment.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, how is that affecting our learning? I mean, there are some topics, especially at a university here, we're wanting our students to have an in-depth knowledge
Right.
of subject matters, and so. What do you think is the consequence in that side of it? And secondly, do we need to be looking at maybe changing the way we teach to either adapt to or counter
Yeah.
some of this very almost attention deficit type of issue that's being seen with us, sort of very shifting through information very quickly, moving to the next
Yeah.
topic, but not staying on topic for very long. So.
I think, I do think there is a trade-off going on between, on the one hand, and I think this is coming out of the science. There have been now quite a few studies in different areas of how being online, being in front of a screen, how it affects us. And what you see is that there are some cognitive skills, some mental skills that seem to get better. I mean, it seems like the more time you spend multitasking online, keeping track of lots of information, the quicker your brain is able to shift focus. And the more you're able to keep track of lots of things simultaneously, and maybe even spot patterns in different displays of information.
Right.
And so, on the one hand, those are good
That's
skills
great
to
skill,
have,
yeah,
particularly
absolutely.
today. But what we seem to be sacrificing is the kind of thinking that requires attentiveness, that requires not, taking it all in quickly, but saying, I'm going to stop taking it in for a while and really focus on one thing.
Begin to do something
Yeah.
with that and reflect on what you've learned,
Right.
and then make some sort of decision about that, or maybe application to it. But that seems to be missing. So maybe this self-reflection and reflection on the material and thoughtfulness about it is something that we're
Yeah.
missing in this.
I think it
fast-paced
is. And if you look at what we know about our brains, there are some things that only happen when you pay attention, when you do screen out distractions. And I think that's when you really start to develop the richest and deepest kind of knowledge, which isn't at all about finding information as quickly as possible.
Right.
It's about creating associations and connections between all this information, which is a very complex process in our brain that happens when you begin to move information from your short-term memory into your long-term memory, and then you start connecting it with all other things, and that gives you the ability to think conceptually and think critically. And I worry that as we kind of train ourselves to shift our focus all the time, grab new information all the time, we're not engaging in those more conceptual and critical ways of thinking.
That's very interesting. We've been talking here at the university on several occasions about teaching to the student for jobs that are yet to be created. And so, and in some of those conversations, it is about the conceptualization. It is putting the facts together to make a new thought and to make a new process go on. So what would you recommend? I mean, is there, yes, we have a lot of data, and yes, we are building skills to sort through that data now, and that's definitely a positive on some.
Yeah.
What would you recommend to sort of take account of what's happening? I mean, you did it originally as you first
Yeah.
started talking about. Wait, I'm shifting through this too fast, and let me be more reflective.
Yeah.
So, what would you say?
I mean, we know that our brains adapt to what we use them for, and so it's similar to your muscles. If the muscles you exercise get stronger, the ones you don't exercise get weaker, and the brain doesn't work in the same way, but it seems to exhibit that kind of adaptability. And so what that tells us is that if you want to be able to think deeply as well as thinking quickly, you have to practice both of those ways of thinking. And so you have to create time for yourself where you're not distracted and where the gadgets are turned off. And that's easy to say.
Right. Difficult to
But
do,
as most
right?
people
Right.
know today, it's very difficult to do. Not only because we tend to crave information, but because if your employer wants you to be constantly monitoring messages and responding, then you're under pressure to do it there. If your friends are, living their social life online through texts and Facebook, it becomes hard to disconnect. If you go to university and everything's online, then you have to connect to get material and stuff. So we're creating, in addition to kind of the personal angle, we're reshaping society to encourage people to be online all the time, basically. And so it becomes very, very difficult to back away, even for short periods of time. But I think, I think there's no substitute for that if you want to engage those parts of your brain that are for reflection and contemplation and attentiveness. If you don't exercise those, they're going to weaken.
Right. And so we're obviously exercising the ones that were,
right,
as the Shallows points out in your book, that we're going through a lot of information very, very quickly and not staying there for very long. What do you see on the horizon as this kind of moves forward? And in terms of the things that you've learned from writing this book and doing the tours and talking about this, where are we going? What do you see on the horizon?
Well, on the one hand, I think we're going in the same direction we've been going, and there's a lot of momentum behind, pushing more and more information onto us, in having us do more and more aspects of our lives through computer screens. And I don't think that pressure to do that is going to stop. On the other hand, I have noticed, and to me this is kind of encouraging, that there is something of a backlash now, in that people are really for the first time beginning to question the hold that the technology increasingly has over them from the moment they wake up and to the moment they go to bed. And I find this questioning of the technology to be happening not only with older people, middle-aged people, but with quite young people too. College students, teenagers even. There's this sense that, do I really want to live my whole life looking at, monitoring Facebook, texting every few minutes back and forth. And what I hope is that discomfort that a lot of us feel, that maybe the technology has too much power over us, will translate into some changes not only in our personal behavior, but in those kind of social processes that push us to use technology in certain ways.
Wow, that sounds very intriguing. So we really need to find a balance between all of this technology and this data that's coming at us to find time for ourselves and be reflective and contemplate.
And find times to have conversations with other people without glancing at our cell phones or our smartphones.
Right. Well, I've thoroughly enjoyed talking with you today, and thank you so much for coming in and speaking with us. Ladies and gentlemen, I've been with Nicholas Carr, who's written the book Shallows. He's here at Columbus State University. He's giving a talk tonight, and so I want to thank you again.
Sure.
And thanks for tuning in. We'll see you next time.